Hello, my name is Sam Gregg, and I am the Research Director at the Acton Institute. It's my great pleasure to join you today for this conference of ethical management and faith in an era of woke capitalism. Woke capitalism, I think, is something that fundamentally corrupts business. But it's not just about American business succumbing to progressive ideologies. Woke capitalism is much more than that, because at the bottom, I really do believe it reflects deep confusion about the purpose of business and misunderstanding of how commerce serves the common good. These are the topics I'd like to explore with you in this brief 20-minute presentation today. One of the more disturbing trends, I think, that has emerged throughout the business and corporate world in the past few years is this phenomenon we're calling woke capitalism. Whether it's things like Nike recalling Betsy Voss flag emblazoned shoes because it was told by activists that the flag represents slavery, or whether it's the case that diversity is becoming as much a goal of business as profit. These are manifestations that corporate America and much of the business world is rapidly aligning itself with progressive causes. Now, the reasons for this are manifold. Those active in commerce and those who teach in business schools, well, they inhabit the same sentimental humanitarian milieu as the rest of us. There's no reason why they shouldn't be as susceptible to this culture than anyone else. No one should be surprised that many business leaders and many people teaching in business schools consequently believe that companies should be aggressively promoting various causes generically associated with the progressive side of politics. These range from gender ideology to radical curtailments of religious freedom. In some cases, I think it's just easier for business leaders to go along to get along. Why risk your job by telling the human resources manager that the firm's commitment to diversity doesn't appear to include a pluralism of political views? In other instances, I think corporate wokeness is primarily about placating militant progressives. But I think if CEOs believe, and if company boards believe, that placating and appeasing militant progressives works, then I have to say they don't know very much about the contemporary left and the militant progressives in general. I think there's some evidence that some businesses going down this path are responding to some consumers' desires that their purchasing choices align with their political stances, as well as pressures from institutional investors who have generally embraced liberal causes and want companies in which they invest to pursue the same causes. But as companies ranging from Gillette to Dick's Sporting Goods have discovered, that often produces financial losses as a consequence of severe backlashes from consumers who hold different views in politics and resent being told that they are bigots because they hold particular political views. Another level, however, I think woke capitalism feeds on something even more problematic, and that is deep confusion about the nature and ends of business. It's not that private enterprise has no responsibilities vis-a-vis society's wider common good. What needs to be understood, I think, is that first, businesses are voluntary associations. Second, that the scope of their activity as businesses is determined and restricted by the goal that is specific to business as a voluntary association. And third, that businesses serve the wider common good by pursuing their particular common good as a business. Let's talk more about that. Any voluntary organization, whether it's a business, an NGO, or a charity, it has a particular good that it is created to realize. Now, in general, this means that such organizations should not pursue goals that go beyond that particular objective. Things usually go wrong when voluntary associations start pursuing objectives that are more properly the responsibility of other groups. We don't want businesses acting like, for example, a chess club, or vice versa. To avoid these problems, we need to identify the specific good that is served by business. The theologian Germain Gregg once offered a particularly concise definition of this. He said, quote, "The common good of every voluntary association is determined by its participants' mutual understanding and consent." He went on to say, quote, "A profit-making business is a voluntary association of the persons who cooperate in the specific activities for which it was organized in order to realize particular economic benefits." End quote. Those economic benefits, they are the good that is primarily realized through a business association. Let's take a fictional example. MAG Enterprises is a private business association that brings together investors, owners, managers, and other employees. All these people freely cooperate together to organize capital, technology, skills, labor, and entrepreneurial insights in order to realize certain economic goals. Now, the reasons why these different individuals associate themselves with the business, well, they vary. Some want to learn more about the particular industry in which MAG Enterprises is involved. Others see the same business as a means to derive an income which they learn to use to support their family. But whatever people's individual reasons for freely involving themselves in MAG Enterprises, everyone must at some level be committed to realizing the specific economic benefits that MAG Enterprises exists to realize. Because that is the good that, after all, ultimately binds them together in this voluntary association. Now, this understanding of business, I want to caution, is not a license for any participant in the company to treat other people solely as a means to economic ends. But it does ground, but also limit the authority of those in the enterprise who, as Germain Gregg wrote, quote, "have the responsibility of coordinating all the activities that allow the business to realize its specific end." It's on this basis, for instance, that CEOs may terminate employees. If a middle manager, for example, is consistently failing to perform up to the required standards, that failure compromises the company's ability to realize its goals. Now, there's obviously room for discussion about how this employee is let go, but the authorities of the CEO to terminate the middle manager, in this case, comes from the CEO's responsibility to ensure that the company achieves its specific goal. The same good, however, the same authority also restricts the CEO, the very same CEO, from involving the business in the pursuit of agendas that have nothing to do with the firm's primary goals. Now, there are, of course, many cultural, charitable, and political activities that people involved in a business can and should be involved in sometimes. But if such endeavors have no immediate bearing on the company's ability to realize its particular common good, these individuals should pursue those goals in a private capacity, not as representatives of the firm. Now, at some point, some people are going to ask, don't private companies have responsibilities that go beyond these boundaries? Isn't it the case that businesses have duties to their customers? In more recent decades, some have even argued that commercial firms have obligations to anyone or anything that is affected by the business's activities. Depending upon which business ethics professor you ask, such stakeholders range from easily identifiable individuals, such as clients, but also to catch-all universals like the environment. Anyone involved in a business, I think, should follow all the moral principles that bind everyone else. Among other things, this means they don't kill, they don't steal from, or lie to customers or anyone else. Businesses must also obey all the just laws that legislators deem necessary for society's common good. These are, in fact, the principal ways in which businesses fulfill their duties to all those entities that might qualify as a stakeholder. But there is another, very precise way in which business contributes to society's common good. And this is by pursuing the specific good that businesses are designed to realize. Now, a society's common good, this consists of all those conditions that assist all members of a society to flourish as they should. Different organizations bear different responsibility for the establishment and maintenance of these conditions. The military, for instance, provides for military security. The judiciary's main duty is to administer justice. The condition that's specific to each entity reflects its particular competence. Hence, judges don't fight wars. And, except in conditions of martial law, generals don't administer justice for civilians. From this standpoint, we see that one primary condition of society's common good that is realized by business is the creation and growth of the wealth that provides for people's material needs and wants. Governments can help businesses accomplish this by, for example, providing public works, protecting property rights, and maintaining courts that resolve contractual disputes. But the organization that most creates wealth in societies, and one which creates an environment in which human flourishing, human creativity, and human freedom can grow, is the private business. Now, to be sure, this goal isn't always at the forefront of the minds of those people who are working in commerce. For some entrepreneurs, it's about the satisfaction they get from creating a new good, service, or product. Others work in the private sector because they're willing to trade off less employment security in return for higher wages. A side effect, however, of all these free choices is that they allow businesses to drive the type of economic growth that over time raises living standards and provides for society's material needs. That is how business contributes to the common good. From this perspective, we see that woke capitalism severely distracts commercial enterprises from realizing their specific good. Business does not exist to engage in Marxist-like consciousness-raising exercises. Business does not exist to alter family structures. Business does not exist to establish world peace. Business does not even exist to right a nation's historical wrongs. Of course, anyone who has been treated unfairly, they certainly merit justice. But as Germaine Grise pointed out, quote, a company's responsibility for doing that, for realizing justice, is limited to the injustices of which it has been guilty, except insofar as presumably just laws might require it to help fulfill the society as a whole to rectify other injustices. So the duty to correct those injustices that have not been committed by the business, well, that belongs primarily, in most instances, to other organizations. Woke capitalism also undermines a business's pursuit of its particular common good by creating circumstances in which boards of directors and CEOs can appeal to the firm's commitment to various political objectives to justify deploying company resources in ways that weaken the business's ability to achieve its specific goal. As UCLA law professor Stephen Bainbridge points out, quote, directors who are allowed to consider everyone's interests end up being accountable to no one, end quote. In this sense, woke capitalism is a recipe for permitting boards of directors and CEOs to exceed their authority and to void responsibility and accountability for their choices and actions. Woke capitalism, I'd suggest, is only in its early stages. Progressives understand its effectiveness in herding American entrepreneurs and American businesses into the pursuit of causes generally regarded as progressive, even radically progressive. Many business leaders, sometimes for reasons of expediency or because of their personal embrace of progressive ideology, or sadly, but to be frank, their lack of courage, consider woke capitalism the way of the future. I think they are wrong. Instead of making business woke, we should not let our moral horizons be clouded by sentimental humanitarianism. We should critique woke capitalism clearly and forcibly, remembering that business exists to realize the particular economic ends that constitute its specific common good. The very integrity of business as a distinct form of voluntary association that makes a particular contribution to society's well-being is, I believe, at stake. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.